and I thought today that we might just do some painting just for a change, but of course I was like, okay, well, right, we'll do it within the shapes, you know, because I couldn't leave it alone. And I remember that I had done this before. I'd done this with my daughter before. Can you see that? And it looks really simple, but and I found this template as well, is what I've done is I'd cut out a template of a pentagon. Remember, we're working on the number 5, and then I'd drawn it on the page, and she'd actually, you know, this is a primrose, that we see primrose. There are lots of primroses around at the moment, and then she painted it within that, and then I think she must have rubbed out the pencil line of the pentagon, but it sort of gave the shape. And of course it's impossibly perfect. Often they're not like that. I've got quite a few. I was going to pick some from outside, but it's lashing with rain. But here are some pressed ones, and I always end up pressing them. Remember, like I showed you in the video a few weeks ago, pressing flowers, where I pinch the stems all the way down so that they go really flat. Can you see that? So that it maintains their shape, because I'm a bit shape obsessed. See that one? I've actually pinched out the circle, the stamen from the inside. So I got these out as reference. So they're primroses. That's a nice one. Can you see that one? I don't know where I got that one from. I think that's something from a holiday. It's got a perfect star in the middle. These were from Cornwall, I think. I don't know actually what they are, but again, you see they've all got holes in the middle because I always pinch the things out to keep the shape. And then I got some, let me get all those out of the way, and then I got some pictures of flowers as well. There are lots of the, hi Anne, there are lots of these out at the moment, at least I think so, or maybe a bit later. That's the wild buttercup. Herb Robert is out at the moment, lovely. This is a hibiscus flower. This I think I took in Spain one time. A bindweed. Yeah, there's quite a lot of bindweed around at the moment. This is vinca. There's a bit of vinca around at the moment. This is mallow. I don't think that's out yet. I think that's later on. They're ridiculously large print for some reason. I'm not actually sure what that is, but I think that's a citrus blossom, some sort of like an orange or something on an orange tree. Oh, and these, I saw these the other day, the greater stitchwort. Aren't they so beautiful? They're so delicate and so beautiful. So I thought we'd do some painting within the shapes. It's a nice sort of painting activity, and I've been using watercolours. I was so engrossed in it, I didn't realise what the time was. Been using watercolours just because you can do nice sort of blending of colours and things with that. And I also, I picked up this book for the kids. This was a few years ago, Watercolour with Me, and it's actually a really nice book. And what it does is it shows you the technique for watercolours that you need, and then on this page it's actually got, you can't see it there, but it's actually got this picture sketched out, and so you just follow the instructions and you create it exactly like that. I think Blazer's done something in there. Anyway, I was just looking at that for technique because I'm not actually a painter myself. Well, depends where you class yourself as a painter, really, isn't it? Hello, Ali. Nice to see you. So that's what we're doing to start with. We're starting with the template. Okay, I've put on the web. Hello, everyone's here today. So that's what we're starting with, and this was a very simple, just to go back to this was a very simple primrose that my daughter must have done a few years ago after I drew the template. As I said, I was tidying up my studio and I found all these things. I was like, oh, isn't it amazing? The things you find when you tidy. And I thought, okay, yeah, so we'll just look at the shapes. So I started doing a few. got a bit off piece there. So I started doing a few because it's watercolours and they always, so what I did was I drew the used my template to draw the let me put it down a bit, to draw the outline. And which one was I doing? That was the stitch walk, I think. And you see how what we have to do is very closely examine these, the kind of the way that the pattern goes, and you can see how the petals are deeply serrated. They call those deeply serrated. And so at each, then what I did is, maybe I better do this a bit harder. I'm going to do the pencil lines harder than I would do usually, just so that you can see it on the camera. I wouldn't advise doing big heavy pencil lines like this, but you see how I did the circle of colour in the middle, and then I've kind of done little V's at the corners which will follow the pattern of the serrated petals, and then along the flat sides of along the sides and not the corners of the pentagon, I've done longer V's which join into the circle in the middle. Again, I'm doing these in hard pencil. I don't recommend doing it that hard. It's just so that you can see it. Can you see? So it looks a bit like we've sort of cut this off, but it's just sort of a nice way to go. And then as the greater stitch wart is white, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to paint the spaces that I've drawn. So in the art world, you call that painting the negative space. And just these are my watercolours. You might have a little set, or you don't have to use watercolours. They can just be poster paints or something. But I quite like watercolours because you don't use white. You let the colour of the paper come through. But kids can use anyone. I mean, it's more about the being creative and making the marks on the page. So don't worry too much about technique. And for some reason I haven't, oh yeah, there's the green one. So what I'm going to do is, like this flower, this greater stitch wart has got green behind. In those V's that I've drawn, I'm going to put the green in. So what I could do is just move you a bit. Ooh, hello. I'm not sure whether you'll actually see it because the light is a bit funny. Maybe I should have turned the lights off today. And then I'm going to put those in the gaps. As I said, the pencil marks I'm not wildly excited about, only because I've done them extra heavy for you. With watercolour, what you can do is put water on the paper first. And if you are using watercolour paper, that works fantastically. Can you see that? Probably can't see that, can you? And it does work reasonably well on cartridge paper, which is what I think this is, like just from one of those sketchbooks you get for like $2.99 or something, or photocopier paper, which will crinkle up a bit. I'll do one over there. Anyway, you can see how I've started to do that, and you're just getting a bit of an abstract flower pattern. So now I'm going to add a bit of a darker green. Ooh, that was a bit of a funny colour. Didn't mean it to quite be like that. Put a bit of that back into it. And then I'm going to do them into the middle. Okay, this is partly observational painting, and it's partly abstract design work. And there's a kind of interesting world there, I think. The pencil lines on this are a bit heavy, and I've said that plenty of times. But that was for the purposes of everyone seeing it, and I'm doing it really quickly so that you can sort of just see what's going on. So we're sort of like getting a bit of design. So it's sort of like oh, look at all those hearts, and I got a sunflower. So we're taking the pattern of this, if you see what I mean, and drawing it within, painting it within our template. I'm going to leave that to dry for a bit, and then I'll come to another one that I started. So this one was, I think, on the buttercup, and I started to do the circle in the middle, and then you can see how the petals, they go really wide, so you get this sort of star at the back. So I started to do that. So this time I'm going to actually do the petals. I did the yellow circle, so I might actually do them in a bit more of an orangey yellow, just so you get a difference. And I'm going to keep it really watery so that I can move the colour around. And I'm staying within my flat edges. Oh, it's cartridge paper this, so you have to sort of work quite quickly. Staying within my flat edges of the shape, my template, my pentagon template, just so that it's sort of all that work, all that understanding. Oh, I used the word work there, didn't I? Wasn't supposed to be. I wasn't supposed to use the word work. All that understanding that we've had about the number 5 and how it comes out in nature. We're letting all that information sit, and we're just being creative with it here. We're not sort of pushing it, but we're just within our pentagon shapes. We're taking sort of patterning and symmetry from the flower faces, and putting it onto our shapes. So there, I've done that there, if you can see that one. Oh, the light's all funny today. Okay, that's really pale colour. I might have to put a bit more colour in there just so that you can see it. It's gone a bit orange now, but that's alright. Maybe I'll just move it around a bit, just so that we can see it for this. You know, the sensitivities of watercolour don't really translate on screen very well. So I'm having to be a bit brash. But what I should do is just leave that to dry, because the thing with watercolour paper is you've got to let it dry, and then you can build up. The thing with watercolour paints is then you can build up layers over the top. Okay, so I've done it a bit stronger there. It's not, I mean, it's not perfect at all by a long shot, but we're understanding what's going on here. So, no, that one's still drying. Might have to put it on the radiator. What else was I going to do? Oh, I started this one. This was actually more of a realistic. I was trying to do a bit more of a realistic illustration, a realistic painting. I've lost the one that oh, here it is. The bindweed one, which I quite like, because it's sort of, there's a star with the white patterning, but the outside is pretty much a pentagon. So I've started by drawing the pentagon, and then I've done the bit in the middle. So now what I might do is use a bigger brush and actually just put lashings of pink on within our, and see what happens within our shape. My pink, it's a bit more red, that. Where's my flower? Here it is. So I sort of, now I need to think about this. So the pink goes along the straight edges, and it sort of goes out like that. And the trick is going to be leaving the gaps for the white to stand out at us. Again, that's the white is then the negative space, which will create the star that we don't paint, if you see what I mean, if that makes any sense. Maybe I didn't describe that very well. I think I should have wet the paper first. In watercolour, you can do this wet on wet technique, where you put the water on first, and then you drop your colour into it, and then you can kind of move the colour around. So I've done that, and it looks a bit flag-like, doesn't it? Like I said, the softness of the watercolour doesn't come across on camera very well. And what I think I need to do, that centre that I painted was dry already in the middle, so I can start to layer up the paint. So again, I'm going to leave that to dry, and then start to layer up a bit more shadow from the inside. So there you go. Short and sweet today. Well, maybe it wasn't so short. 20 past. Yeah, well, I did start a bit late. But what might be quite nice, this one's almost dry. is when you get to that point. See, this was the greater stitch wart, wasn't it, where it is? And this flower, the inside of this flower is so delicate and beautiful that it has these lovely little stamen that come out right from the centre. And what you can do is, once you've got the basis of your pattern, then you can always draw into it. And there will actually, on those stamen, there will actually be, it will be divisible by 5. So there might be 15 stamen, or there might be 10, or there might be 20 or something. There might, and so, and it's the same with this buttercup as well. I went round and counted all those. It won't always be exactly that, but the idea will be close enough. And so then you can follow that rhythm in your illustration, in your design. And so I'm doing 3 for each petal, sort of like they're actually like designs of sort of like little illustrations, which is the detail. Can you see that, the detail in the middle? Not sure whether that's focusing or not. Anyway, I'll take pictures and I'll put them on the page. But that's, you're just doing simple things to gently sort of let that information about the 5s within the 5, and it's how it appears within nature, and you're just letting it sit in your understanding and designing around it. And that just makes me really happy.